What's going on, Internet? Just because Halloween's over doesn't mean we can't talk about some Halloween-related movies still. Because Thanksgiving's almost upon us doesn't mean I can't discuss what I consider to be a modern-day Halloween classic, and that is what I'm going to do right now.
What happens every year when the harvest moon shines its brightest is about to happen again, and again, and again.
The Barn is a really interesting project. It's a passion project by director Justin M. Seaman. It's his debut feature film. It stars Mitchell Mussolino, Lexi Drips, and Will Stout. It tells the story of a group of friends who are going to a concert on Halloween night, and they stop in a local town, and they end up playing a little game of truth or dare, and they end up upsetting an urban legend involving a barn full of demons that wake up and harvest flesh when you knock on the door and say trick or treat 3 times. Like I said, this is an interesting film because it's a passion project. It's his debut feature film. It's a film that I believe he wrote when he was about 10 years old, something like that. And it's fully funded by Kickstarter, from what I understand. If you look into the making of this film, there's a lot going up against it, and there was a lot of chances that it wouldn't get made at all. And they really pushed for it, and they really stuck through, and they really gave it their all, and they made this movie, and it is really inspiring. And the end result is just an absolute joy. This film is made as a complete love letter to the 80s, to the slasher films like Halloween, like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and it shows. The amount of love that went into this movie absolutely just shines, because this film is a fucking joy. I bought this film, blind bought this film back on DVD in April, and there was no way to watch it other than DVD at the time because they didn't put it out on VOD until very recently due to, you know, the risk of it being stolen and all that shit. But so I completely blind bought this movie just based on a trailer and nothing else, and I was so glad that I did because I was grinning the entire time I watched it. It is such a good time, and the amount of just love and effort that went into this movie is astonishing, and I absolutely loved it. Recently, it just came out on Blu-ray as well. I just bought it, and if you guys are interested, you really should too, because this Blu-ray alone is worth a watch. It's got a whole documentary on the making of on it. It's really, really cool, and I adore this movie, so I'm just gonna kind of dive right in and talk about it. Like I said, this film is made as a complete love letter to the 80s, but what it does differently than a lot of just the movies that are, you know, paying homage to the 80s and trying to be all nostalgic, this film feels completely as though it was pulled right out of the 80s and released in 2016. There is no part of this film that ever made me think, oh yeah, this was made 2 years ago. This movie completely feels like it was made 20, 30 years ago. It is astounding, and I really like, well, I guess more like 40 years ago now. But regardless, I mean, the level of care that went into making this film feel like an 80s film is just wonderful. It's all practical effects. It might have been shot on film, I'm not entirely sure. It completely emulates the 35mm look, but I can't tell if it was actually shot on 35mm. The writing, the acting, everything is a really just loving throwback to the 80s, and it's such a good time. Mitchell Mussolino and Will Stout play Sam and Josh, and the two of them, A, have very good chemistry, and B, play very surprisingly charming characters. When in a film like this, where a lot of characters are there to be just fodder, it's nice that they still manage to all be charming, or at least the main group manages to be charming and somewhat likable, even if they are obnoxious and hokey. But I mean, they're meant to be. It's a throwback to films of that era when all the acting was hokey and just really corny. There's a whole bunch of really charming throwbacks to that era, both in terms of visuals and in terms of actual kills. There's a full-on homage to Cannibal Holocaust in here with one of the kills, and it's just so... there's just something about it that really oozes charm. You can see that the director of this film is a horror fan. You can see that everything was meticulously crafted to be a really nice love letter to films of that era, and I love that. I love the designs of the demons, and the fact that these are creatures he designed when he was about 10 years old is A, adorable, and B, really speaks volumes, because these things are really pretty well designed, and they look cool and act cool, and each have their own distinct personalities, and I just like that a lot. I think that it speaks volumes not only for Justin Simon's creativity, but also that his dedication to creating a film like this that he wrote decades before it actually got made. And that is, like I said, just really inspiring and really cool to see. And I love this movie. Are the characters corny? Yeah. Is their acting hokey? Yeah. Are they all somewhat stereotypical? Absolutely. Mitchell Mussolino as Sam is just, you know, the main guy who's obsessed with Halloween and doesn't really want to grow up. You have Will Stout as Josh, his best friend, who is just, he's the best friend who's, you know, very supportive. You have Lexi Drips as Michelle, who is the innocent girl who he has a crush on. Cortland Woodard is a jock. Nikki Darling's the Ali Sheedy type. Nicholas Joshua is the prankster. They're all archetypes, yes, but they're meant to be. The practical effects are wonderful. Like the level of this is a low budget film, and the level of gore it achieves, despite some of it looking pretty fake, although I believe that was intentional, it just adds to the overall feeling that this movie was just pulled right out of the 80s and released modern day. The creativity of some of the kills is hysterical. Like, someone gets killed with a cornstalk through the eye, and that is hilarious and awesome. And this movie does not take itself too seriously. It knows how to have fun, and that is probably its best factor. You know, people's faces getting ripped off and hands going through the front of their heads. There's a kill montage in this that almost feels like it belongs in Peter Jackson's Dead Alive, and I think that's, like, it's hysterical. I love that. This movie's not a perfect film, obviously. Like I said, there are some shots in terms of the gore that I feel could have been shot a little differently to make it look better. Dialogue at times can be a little expository, and there are points where there are certain characters who literally just exist to spout off exposition, and then they die horribly and hilariously. And things like that definitely detract from the film a bit, but the level of charm this film exudes is far better than any of its faults. And I can't recommend enough, not only that people watch this, but that y'all make this a fucking Halloween tradition, because this is the kind of movie that I'm gonna absolutely watch every year around Halloween. It's so much fun, and it's so insane and so charming, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I can't recommend enough that you buy it, watch it, break it out every year around the holidays. It's a fun, fun time, and I'm gonna say that The Barn is absolutely a must-see. Speaking as someone who just finished a feature, I know it's not easy, and seeing the level of shit they had to go through to get this movie made, and seeing all the obstacles that were in their way, and seeing that they managed not only to finish it, but to make something as awesome as this, it's truly inspiring, and I really, really love it, and I think that everybody should check it out, because it's totally worth the watch. Especially if you're a fan of the whole 80s trend that's going on. If you are a fan of 80s slashers, you will love this movie. It's a great film to kind of wean yourself off of Halloween. It is a total blast, and I really think you'll dig it. Give it a watch. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. You can click down there and like, comment, subscribe, and next week, I'm going to have a really fun surprise for you all. So keep watching, stay tuned. I'll have some more reviews before that, but until then, thank you so much.
This Halloween, you are their treat. The Barn. Coming soon to video cassette.